In this video, I'm going to talk about open and closed position chords. These are two different methods for voicing chords, and theory assignments will commonly ask you to use both methods, so it's important to know the difference. In general, the notes in open position chords are spread farther apart, and the notes in closed position chords are packed densely together. Open position chords appear often in ensemble works, where the various voices or instruments have wide enough ranges so as to not be bound closely together. Closed position chords appear often in keyboard music, hence they can also be referred to as keyboard-style chords, where the distance between notes is bound by the size of the pianist's hand. But we can be more specific with these definitions. Because most theory assignments ask for four-voice part writing, I'm going to tailor these definitions to four-voice situations. Here are the concrete rules. A chord is in closed position when the upper three voices are on adjacent chord tones. Here's a simple example to start us off. Here we have four voices: C3 in the bass, C4 in the tenor, E4 in the alto, and G4 in the soprano. Remember our definition. To have a closed position chord, the three upper voices must be on adjacent chord tones. The tenor could be anywhere. That doesn't matter. In this case, it's an octave above the bass. That's fine. What matters is that the alto is on the next possible chord tone up from the tenor's location, and the soprano is on the next possible chord tone up from the alto. So the notes of our C major chord, obviously, are C, E, and G. Okay? So if our tenor was on an E, the alto would have to be on the next chord tone up from there, which would be G. Then the soprano would have to be on the next chord tone up from there, which would be C. So if our tenor was on an E, the alto would be on a G and the soprano would be on a C in a closed position chord. Okay, now let's look at open position chords. A chord is in open position when two adjacent voices, other than the bass and tenor, skip over a chord tone. In this example, just at a glance, we can see that there's more space between the upper three voices. But let's look more closely. Our bass is on C3 and our tenor is on C4, but remember, the distance between those voices doesn't matter. What matters is the distance between the tenor, alto, and soprano. The tenor is on C4, the alto is on G4, and the soprano is on E5. Now, remember our definition. If two adjacent voices skip over a chord tone, the chord is in open position. Here, the tenor and alto skip over E4, and the alto and soprano skip over C5. So, this chord is in open position. Let's look at another example. Here, the tenor and alto are on adjacent chord tones, E4 and G4, but the soprano skips over the next chord tone up, which would be C5, and is voiced instead on E5. This missing C5 chord tone between the soprano and alto means that this chord is in open position. Lastly, let's just look at a few examples from the repertoire. Again, we're looking only at the upper three voices. The notes in the bass clef here are essentially just a beefed up version of a single B-flat bass note. Here we're looking at a B-flat major chord. On beat 1, the tenor is on a D4. If we're going to say that this chord is in closed position, the alto would have to be on the next possible chord tone above that D4, which would be F4. As you can see, that's exactly where the alto is. And the soprano is on the next possible chord tone above F4, B flat 4. So on beat 1, we have a closed position chord. On beat 2, the chord inverts in the right hand. The tenor is on a different note of the chord, but the three upper voices are all still on adjacent chord tones, so we still have a closed position chord. If the tenor was to stay on the D4 while the alto and soprano moved, that would create an open position chord because there would be a vacant chord tone, the F4, between the tenor and alto on beat 2. Here's one final example. On beat 1, where we see the piano dynamic marking, there's a missing chord tone between the tenor and alto. This is an A major chord. The tenor is on E4, and the alto is on C-sharp 5. That leaves a vacant A4 between the two voices. Thus, the chord on beat 1 is in open position. On beat 2, however, the gap between the tenor and alto closes, and there are no longer any possible chord tones between them. So, on beat 2, we have a closed position chord. Okay, hopefully the concept is clear by now. Thanks for watching this video. I hope it's been helpful.